Happy Tuesday. Thanks for joining me. I hope you had a great weekend. It was a long weekend, and I trust that you enjoyed it, that you found a place to worship Jesus who is worthy to be praised. And I trust that you were encouraged and you grew in your relationship because of your church service. Thanks for joining me this week as we continue our study on the Hall of Fame, which we're calling the Hall of Faith in Hebrews chapter 11. We're going to be in Hebrews 11, verses 8 through 10 this morning. We're going to look at the life of Abraham. So if you want to go ahead and find it in your copy of God's Word, I'm going to set it up, give us a quick reminder of where we're going. The Hall of Fame is a structure to house memorials to famous individuals who have been selected as extremely successful in their area of participation. Usually it's sports. And remember, I think of baseball, football, basketball, hockey, whereas also could put in there the Olympics Hall of Fame. And it's the opportunity to remember those that did so well in a particular area. In our copy of God's Word in Hebrews chapter 11 is our Hall of Fame, but it's those that had faith, an example of people we can look to who lived a life of faith that we can learn from. They were not perfect people, but they were people that continued to walk in faith. And remember, what is faith? Faith is the reality of what we hope for, the evidence of things we cannot see. Faith and hope go together. The same things are the object of our hope, are the object of our faith. That's what Matthew Henry said. He's a commentator. And so we've been working through this Hall of Fame and the Hall of Faith. And first day we looked at Abel, and we can approach God by his standards. Remember, we talked about the White House. We had to go through those standards to get into the White House. Last time we looked at Enoch, and he walked in obedience and he walked in faith to God, and his last step on earth was his first step in heaven, and he had a faith in God. So today we look at Abraham, and the question I have for you to get us started is, when we go on a road trip, the first question is, where are we going? If you're in my car, the second question is, are we there yet? Now, we're not even out of the driveway, and sometimes they're asking, are we there yet? Just imagine the response I would get if I would tell my girls, I don't know when we're going to get there. What time? I don't know. Where are we going? I don't know. Well, then how are you going to know when we get there? The good Lord will let us know when we get there. They would look at me and they would either think that I'm a great man of faith or that have lost my marbles. And that's what happened with Abraham. Abraham was a man of great faith, and we're in Hebrews chapter 11, verses 8 through 10. Only we don't believe Abraham lost his marbles or he lost his mind. We believe that Abraham was a great man of faith, and we're going to be reminded of his story and why we can look to his example to be able to strengthen our faith. We're in Hebrews chapter 11, verses 8 through 10, but really the life of Abraham happens in Genesis chapters 12 through 25. It's probably 13 or 14 chapters, and it's a great read. These are some of the stories that we grew up having these stories in Sunday school and in junior church and vacation Bible school, but it's the ones that we can remind ourselves of because there's a lot of truth, especially when we look at it through the lens of having faith. Abraham was one of the greatest examples of faith in the Bible. Abraham, he endured in his faith and against all odds. God called Abraham and he challenged Abraham to be a witness about the one true God to the world. Abraham, he was supposed to separate himself from the world and he was to follow God. Abraham was called to leave his family, his friends, his job, and even his country, the place that he knew, the land that he knew, and he is to travel to a place that God would show him as he walked. Abraham did not know how long he was going to walk or where his end destination was going to go, but God called Abraham. God told Abraham, you go. And Abraham, he went. He walked in obedience. He walked in faith. He walked in trust because God had spoken to him. Abraham was promised three blessings in Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. It's land, seed, and blessing. Abraham was promised a parcel of land. He was promised a child or children. And then he was promised by God that those who bless you will be blessed by God, and those that curse Abraham will be cursed by God. Abraham obeyed God and he lived out that obedience wholeheartedly. Abraham, he went not knowing where he was walking, but he acted immediately. Abraham, he did not bargain with God. He did not try to manipulate God. He didn't ask God for signs and signs upon signs and tell God to wait until Abraham was finished doing what he wanted to do, or wait until next season, or wait until I get this next big promotion, or wait until this happens. God called Abraham. Abraham heard it, and then he immediately acted in obedience. He did not waver. He did not question. He did not hesitate. He did not ask, God, where would you have me go? Abraham was called by God. He picked up his stuff and he walked in obedience. Abraham, he believed in the promises of God, and therefore he acted upon those promises that God gave him. A person who truly believes God obeys God. And that's easy for me to say, but in a moment of vulnerability, it's sometimes hard to do, especially when God calls you to something radical or something big or something where you don't know the next step, as he did with Abraham. One commentator that I read this morning, he said, there's no such thing as belief without obedience. And if we believe God, if we're going to take God and trust him and put our salvation in him, then we need to live in obedience to what he has called us to do. That's easy for us to say on a Tuesday morning, sitting at our computer or on your smartphone or on your tablet or iPad. But yet, whenever God calls us to something, how many of us we make excuses or we hesitate? What a great example of Abraham today, a reminder that when God calls us to something, we should live in obedience and step out in faith and do it. The question I have for you and I have for me that I'm thinking about today is, am I willing to follow God where he leads me, even if I don't know the destination? How do I know God calls me? He confirms it in his word. So the question I have for you, I'll come back to it and end on this. Am I willing to follow God where he leads me? If God would call me, am I going to walk out in faith and obedience, saying, I'm trusting in you and I'm trusting in your word, God. I will follow you, even if I don't know where I'm going or how long it's going to take me to get there, because that's what Abraham did. A great example. If I can help you in any way, I trust that you'll reach out. And if not, I will see you tomorrow morning for another day as we look at Abraham's wife. Have a great Tuesday.